Chuck Todd lamented the fact that Joe Biden had to answer for racist, "you ain't black" comment. And I'm reading the story thinking to myself, when has Trump ever said anything like that, especially directly to a black person? The reality is he hasn't. Yet the media insists over and over again that Donald Trump is racist, xenophobe, bigot. It didn't work last time. It won't work this time. In a story I covered the other day, there was one bit of data from 2016 I was reading that found minorities don't respond well when you just call Trump a bigot. When you say he's racist or whatever, they don't care. It actually does work really well with white progressives, and that's actually hurting Trump in certain areas. But for the most part, they don't actually care. So Joe Biden, for those that aren't familiar, I think everybody knows the story right now, was talking to Charlemagne the God, and he said, if you haven't figured out if you're for me or for Trump, then you ain't black. And all of a sudden, we saw major outrage. Everybody was slamming Joe Biden. Well, Chuck Todd mentioned basically, let's actually read the story, and I'll go through this. But the gist of this, the point I want to make, and I'm going to read another story for you guys from the New York Times, is that Trump could say something like, they're not sending their best, right? The comment about the illegal immigrants coming up. And he's called racist for it, even though he didn't make a direct statement about a particular race. Joe Biden can literally say something to a black person, and the media is like, well, this doesn't seem to be fair now, does it? No, it doesn't seem to make sense. I also want to drag Trump for some of his tweets. We'll get to that in a second. But let's get started with the double standard and the complete hypocrisy from the press. From Newsbusters. In a tacit admission of how the Democratic Party thinks of the black community on Friday, presumptive nominee Joe Biden exclaimed that if a black person had to think about voting for him or President Trump, then their blackness was in question. By Sunday, NBC was tired of hearing the outrage at Biden's blatantly racist remark, with Sunday Today host Willie Geist huffing that Biden had to apologize for 2 days. And political director Chuck Todd lamented that the former vice president was being held to account at all. First of all, Donald Trump's support among the black community it's very, very, very low. Okay. Now, he's done better. It's significant to point out that there have been several polls over the past few months showing that Trump is improving his standard among black voters. But it is still like 75 to 80% negative. But that is significant for a Republican. So it does matter that he's gaining in this area. Joe Biden is apologizing first and foremost because he made a direct statement to a person. Like, Trump didn't do that. All right. Well, let's keep reading. After huffing about 2 days of walking back the comments, Geist admitted obviously that was offensive to a lot of people, but he immediately wrote it off and boasted about how well Biden was doing in the polls despite himself. It gets to the kind of campaign he's trying to conduct from his home, doing it virtually through these interviews. And yet he's doing well in the polls, a Quinnipiac poll and a Fox News poll showing him opening up leads among many important groups. What is the state of his campaign for Joe Biden right now? Of this campaign? Prefacing it as just a quick side observation, Todd responded by whining that Biden had to answer for his racist comment. Quote, I'm struck about if Donald Trump makes the same type of gaffe, he blows through it, plows through it, pretends it never happened. Joe Biden, the expectation is he has to deal with it, and he tried to deal with it, he said. When Biden's comments were fresh, Todd had noted that Biden had a history of making racially charged comments. But on Sunday, he was trying to smooth that over. It's a reminder this is not the first time that he's sometimes gotten loose with his words. Loose with his words, huh? Particularly when it comes to feeding into old stereotypes at times. Further contradicting his previous admission of Biden's past bolstering of stereotypes, Todd brushed off Biden's, quote, you ain't black exclamation, claiming, so look, at the end of the day, it's a bad one-day story, but it wasn't and shouldn't be. He went on to suggest the incident was a reminder of the risk-reward of this Biden in the basement strategy. And according to him, the strategy was paying off despite Biden's racist comments. Now, before I read this, I do want to be fair and point out Chuck Todd is partly right. Now, the issue I take with this is that Trump never made, or at least as far as I can remember or tell, maybe I'm wrong about this, a direct statement to someone in this way. Trump has said things that can be deemed, racially insensitive, but he's routinely just called a bigot, racist, whatever, or xenophobe because, he's made certain statements. Now, I do think it's fair to point out Trump did say that, he read a statement or something. So I want to be careful here. I should have pulled it up. That Donald Trump was calling for a complete and total ban on Muslims entering the country, yada, yada. It is important to point out the literal fact of the matter that's calling out a religion, not a race of people. But Trump has made offensive statements directly at people. He has had to answer for them. He just refuses to, and people like it. So it's not an issue of Joe Biden being forced to do anything or lamenting this fact. It's about what you want from your candidate and what the other candidates are willing, or the other party are willing to accept. Trump says something offensive and then says, political correctness. Do you remember what happened when Trump was on the debate stage and he was asked about tweeting nasty things about women? And I think it was Megyn Kelly. She brought up Rosie O'Donnell and, I'm sorry. She didn't. She mentioned to Trump that he said something negative about women. And then Trump said only Rosie O'Donnell, and everybody laughed. Trump's funny. He brushed it aside by saying, yeah, well, you know what? What are you going to do about it? Look, man, this is the point. Okay. If you can't win because you're stuck in a circular firing squad where everyone's going to get mad at you and never forgive you for doing these things, well, then what do you expect? It's not Trump's fault you guys are, have a stick. I'll be careful about where I go with this. We'll keep it family friendly. It's not the Republicans' fault. It's not America's fault that you guys are stodgy and politically correct. That's what you cater to, and that's what you pander to, and that's what you must answer to. Trump could. I'd prefer it if he did. He doesn't have to, though. Let's read a little bit more. He said, I think there's some on his team that think it's better to keep him to stay in the basement. Make this Trump versus Trump, Trump desperately wants to make this Trump versus Biden. The less you're out in public, the harder that will be. At the same time, he was able to sit here and make a gaffe while in his basement. That isn't a good sign for Biden. So look, at the end of the day, it's a bad one-day story, but the polls are the poll, and we're seeing that we're seeing this. We're seeing the more this is Trump versus Trump, the better it is for Biden. That is true, but the polls could be off. And I'm curious if this kind of rhetoric that targets Trump and blames Trump, even when the story's about Biden, when it laments that Biden must answer for things that they expect him to answer for. I'll put it this way. If your entire audience is like, Donald Trump is a bad person for saying these things, why would you say this? Wouldn't you say something like, it's great that Joe Biden is willing to answer for his mistakes and Trump isn't? No, it's not fair. Why do we have to apologize? You think that's going to resonate with the audience you've tried, courting? No, I certainly don't think so. And Trump certainly doesn't care. Here's another, they go on. Yeah, the Biden campaign is happy to let Donald Trump have the stage for the most part when they look at their poll numbers. Geist agreed. This rhetoric from the press, where they play this game, they attack Trump supporters, they lament they have to play by the rules, it does something. It creates secret Trump voters. It skews the polling. It makes people hide their true support. I've told this story a couple times. I was in an airport. This was last year. I think I was flying to Dallas. And the TV's on. I'm talking to the bartender, a young woman, and it's CNN. I asked to put on CNN, laughingly, because I was like, at least no one will complain, and we can watch it. Because if I said like MSNBC or Fox, like who knows? Even though CNN is really, really bad, right? And so I slowly start building up a conversation with the bartender. She's for Bernie. The guy to my left, turns out he's a Trump voter who hated Donald Trump. Hated is a strong word. He basically said that he thought Trump was a lowlife. He wouldn't invite Trump to his house for dinner, but he was going to vote for him. He did last time and he would again. You know why? The money was good. The economy was good. And that was his view. And he didn't care. How many people are worried about the cultural ramifications of admitting they don't care about what Trump says? Trump says a lot of offensive things. And, well, some people know he does and they don't care. Some people like that he does. And I think a lot of people like that he does. It's like I mentioned the Rosie O'Donnell thing. They all laughed about it. A lot of people like that he refuses to back down. That's a good sign to a lot of people. It says that if Trump is put in a position with a bully, world leader, or somebody, he's going to push back and tell you to F off. And he does. He does. He absolutely does. Now, to his own detriment, I think people have not been calling Trump out for the mistakes he's made, especially with his Twitter account. He gets himself into trouble. And I'll tell you what. But I do want to do this, right? Before I'm going to talk about Donald Trump's Twitter account and some of the pitfalls of it. But I want to point this out. The New York Times says Trump promotes posts from racist and sexist Twitter feed. And I'm highlighting this to delineate, to show you the distinction between what Joe Biden has to answer for and what Trump has to answer for. Trump could say anything and they find a way to call it racist. That's the problem. If Trump really does say something that's racist or racially insensitive, at this point, you've cried wolf too much. And that's it. We're done. Every single thing he has ever done has been bigoted or out of context. And that's another problem. the very fine people hoax, the things Joe Biden launched his campaign off of it. So yes, Joe Biden has to answer when in an interview with someone who said, we've got questions for you, is then dragged based on his race. Yes, Joe Biden has to apologize for it. Trump hasn't done that. Trump invited, he has Latinos for Trump and he has blacks for Trump. And he had I don't know if he's done events for both groups, but he has done huge events with very, large, he's had like the prominent individuals come out. They speak on his behalf. Trump has actually catered to these groups. Joe Biden seemingly was trying to, what I think Joe Biden was trying to do? I think he thought it was a funny way to endear himself, to try and speak their language. That's what they do. It's a manipulation tactic. I don't think Trump does that. That's the difference. Hillary Clinton put on a Southern drawl once. She was in, I can't remember where she was. It was like Alabama or something. And a lot of people laugh because they're like, does she not know the internet exists? Maybe she does and didn't care. But then we all saw the video go viral of her pretending to have a Southern accent. It used to work. It really did. Before the age of the internet, maybe in the 70s or whatever, when Hillary Clinton was younger, you could go on the campaign trail and speak in a really different way and say whatever you wanted privately because nobody was recording and the news wouldn't come out. You can't do that today. So now we can see that, first of all, why is Chuck Todd even lamenting this? I mean, I get it. Right? In their skewed, biased view, Trump is really bad. He should have to answer for these things. Well, Trump's catering to a different audience. Nothing you can do about that. But more importantly, when in recent history has Trump said something directly like Joe Biden did? Again, I'm not going to go through Trump's entire history. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Trump did say something. Okay, so that's fair. But why would the press need to bring that up? Shouldn't he just be saying, Biden should answer for it, so should Trump? How about that? But now that brings me to the pitfalls of Donald Trump's Twitter account. This is a story from the Daily Mail. They say, GOP lawmaker demands Trump stop promoting Joe Scarborough murder conspiracy theory and warns it will destroy us, as the dead aides family say they fear retaliation from trolls if they speak up. Donald Trump, man, he really needs to drop this one. I'll tell you what. This is Joe Scarborough derangement syndrome. Look, I get it. A lot of people have questions. There's weird videos that have popped up. I've seen a bunch of Trump supporters saying look at this recording from the early 2000s of Joe Scarborough joking about it. Yeah, you can bring it up. Fine. But I'll tell you what, to the average person, Trump seems obsessed with this. It's not an argument. No one cares about Joe Scarborough to begin with. It is Joe Scarborough derangement syndrome. Now, maybe that's a little bold to say, but Trump has tweeted, 4 or so times now about this. And for me, I don't care. I really don't, man. I don't watch Joe Scarborough. I don't care about Joe Scarborough. I only passively comment on some things he does or says for the most part. So why is Trump incessantly tweeting about this guy and this conspiracy that means literally nothing to me? It will be bad because let me tell you something, especially to the Trump supporters who need to hear this. Regular people don't know or care about any of that stuff. Regular people want to hear about issues. It's what got the blue wave through in 2018. There's a bunch of reasons for sure. Mostly anti-Trump sentiment, but a lot of these Democrats that were running were campaigning on kitchen table issues. Trump would be wise to avoid this kind of bickering. Now, if Trump wants to call out the fake news and say Joe Scarborough is a low rating fake news, peddler, conspiracy peddler, whatever, Russiagate, that works. It works because it's true. It works because we know it and we see it. When Trump calls out the press, when Kayleigh McEnany calls out the press, we laugh. Finally, someone's calling out these elitists who think they're untouchable. But when Donald Trump comes out with this stuff about a woman hitting her head on the desk, 20 plus, around 19 or so years ago, it doesn't say anything to me. It doesn't say anything to me other than, do you have an actual argument against Joe Scarborough? That's something you want to avoid, being one of these Twitter reply people who has no real argument. There are a bunch of Twitter users, progressives, and it's really, really mind-numbing to me. And it's true for conservatives, for sure. But all they do is they reply not with a factual point, but with an insult or with something that can't be proven or something nonsensical. When Trump engaged in this game, I'll say right now, Adam Kinzinger is completely right. Completely unfounded conspiracy. Just stop spreading it. Stop creating paranoia. It will destroy us. Trump tweeted, a lot of interest in this story about psycho Joe Scarborough. So a young marathon runner just happened to faint in his office, hit her head on his desk and die. I would think there's a lot more to the story than that. An affair? What about the so-called investigator? Read the story. Yeah, sure. I get it. Why bring it up? Look, maybe you really want an interview into Joe Scarborough. Maybe you really think there's something fishy about the story. That's fine. Regular people won't get it. It's too in the weeds. It goes right over their heads. And regular people are just going to be like, huh? What? Why do I care about MSNBC? MSNBC viewers will keep thinking the negative things they think about Trump. And regular and of course, diehard Trump supporters are going to laugh about it. And I get it, Regular middle of the road people are just going to be confused and say, I don't understand this. But I will tell you what, man, in my opinion, Trump has made the best argument possible for why we can't allow social media censorship. So apparently, I don't know, Trump wants to have a panel put together or something. This article is irrelevant. Trump wants to put together a panel reviewing social media censorship. And I'm reading through this and I'm seeing even criticisms from the right over Trump's tweets. Yeah, man. I brought this up many times. OK, when I've traveled, when I've been in cars with people, I get Ubers and stuff. I'll be like, so, we'll be talking. Politics come up. I'll say, who are you voting for? Many of them said they voted for Trump. I've heard this story many times. They voted for Trump, but they just wish you would tweet less. And I laugh and I'm like, yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Trump really is able to effectively rally a national base with his tweets, for sure. But this is the best example for why we shouldn't have social media censorship. If even the GOP, or at least one Republican, is going to call out Trump for the Joe Scarborough thing, and people are going to highlight it's making him look bad, I think it is making him look bad. If you ban Trump, then he doesn't say these things. Think about what would happen. I'd be willing to bet if Trump's Twitter was taken away. Well, actually, I take that back. I could argue that in some regards, his approval rating would be going up. But the one thing the press really hates about Twitter is that it allows Trump to bypass the press as a whole. So there are major advantages to it. So I guess it's a double-edged sword. Trump can tweet what he wants to tweet. He can say what he wants to say. And the people don't have to go through the press to get those answers. We don't need a White House press corps when Trump can just tweet something. We do need them to clarify answers, but they're just playing some stupid game about reality TV or whatever. But this shows us exactly why it's important. Imagine, as I've stated many times, when social media companies ban conservatives, when they ban people who are the worst of the worst, it actually cleans up the Republican Party. It cleans up the influencers, and then it's a ripple effect through the entire party. It makes everything straighten up. And when they don't ban Antifa and these weirdo leftists, it makes everything out of sync and and wacky. You end up with Democrats pandering to the woke far left on issues that nobody cares about. Get rid of all of these, far leftist weirdos who incite violence, who break the rules and get away with it, and you will see the Democratic Party clean up in 2 seconds. So I have to wonder, are they actually rooting for Donald Trump? That's the weirdest thing to me. No, I think the reality is people are just, there's a lot of stupid people. I don't want to say all people are stupid. Obviously, it's not true. But, it's like George Carlin said, think about how stupid the average person is. Now realize half of them are stupider than that. Take that stupid half, and some of them get jobs through nepotism, and now you got a bunch of dumb people. When you have social media rallying people across the country, not most people, but just enough in key cities, the most active people. These are the people who organize. The Republicans have now been pushed into a small box in the center right. The left is ultimately just super far left, and the Republican faction, the center right faction, is actually gaining allies in the center left faction and liberals, many of them jumping the line and now switching and changing their affiliation or their opinions. The left just becomes catering to a fringe sect of weirdos. Now think about what happened if Twitter actually got rid of those people. Here's an argument, I guess, for Twitter getting, actually censoring more people. I disagree with this, but the general idea is if they cleaned up the left, then you'd end up with the Democratic Party catering to activists nationwide who have more sound opinions and more rational takes on things. They haven't. So center-left individuals who never found themselves as conservatives are boxed into a corner where they have to choose between the people who are just to their right, who kind of disagree with, but for the most part sound reasonable, and the wackos of the far left who are being propped up and who are authoritarian across the board. So long as you allow these people to say their thing, you make them look bad. I think this will ultimately help Trump. But back to the main point about the press. I want to wrap this up by saying this. What we're seeing with the press, the attacks on Trump, the assumptions about Biden, will create secret Trump voters. The polling will be skewed. Everything will be off. And I think this lends to a Donald Trump victory in November. But I have been thinking, notably about mail-in voting. There was a post by, I think Mindy Robinson is her name. I don't know a whole lot about her, but there's a Twitter thread going viral I saw where people are responding saying that they've been purged from voter rolls or that their mail-in ballots went missing, things like that. We heard the same thing in Paterson, New Jersey. The left and the media claim there's no confirmed voter fraud or anything. And it's like, well, how do you confirm it? That's really difficult. If someone comes up and says, I never received my mail-in ballot, but I'm still registered as having voted, that's not confirmed voter fraud. That's just must be an error. Therein lies the problem. So the issue isn't voter fraud. And my advice to conservatives would be to drop voter fraud and talk about mail-in error or tally error or lost ballots. Don't talk about malfeasance and alleged conspiracies. Alleged ineptitude, right? They find missing ballots. There was a story where it was like, what was it? South Carolina ballots were found in Maryland or something. Or no, I'm sorry. Missouri ballots, I think it was, found in Baltimore. Like, how does that make sense? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Sometimes ballots go missing. So we want secure facilities. They don't. Or at least many don't. So I'll tell you what, I've been very bullish on a Trump victory, but seeing all of these things, seeing the social media censorship, I'm not convinced anymore. I think there's a lot of reasons to think Trump will win, but I'll tell you this. Convening a panel to discuss social media censorship, look, man, your most ardent supporters and your loudest supporters are gone. And the Republicans have done nothing. But maybe that's on purpose. Maybe they like the fact that Alex Jones, that Milo Yiannopoulos are gone because they were bombastic and they made Trump look bad. And now you're left with suit-wearing professionals like Will Chamberlain of Human Events. If you're not familiar, check him out. He's a very calm, rational, professional, straightforward guy who makes good arguments for Trump. And you get rid of the bombastic, sensationalist personalities. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it will help them. I can't tell you, man. I just look at the news, comment on a moderately surface layer aspect of it. It's the best I can do. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.